So I joined the army, and because I was acting out because of my mental illness, they didn't like me very much. So I experienced hazing. I was actually duct taped in the fetal position. It was probably the most traumatic thing in my life, I think. And I really believe that's how schizophrenia really came out.
Hi, I'm Lance, and this is UNSILENT, a speak series by NoStigmas that champions mental health advocacy and challenges the stigmas that all too often prevent people from getting the help they need. We're so glad you're here. In today's episode, we get to know Jason. Now, Jason is a veteran, but also opens up and shares his life experiences with schizophrenia. In today's first part of a two-part conversation with Jason, we dive a little deeper into his background and who he is, and he opens up about some of the challenges he's had with schizophrenia. He also shares what it was like to join the army and some of the hazing experiences he had because of his schizophrenia diagnosis. We thank Jason again for opening up to us and sharing his story with us. We know he truly does put his advocacy in action. Let's dive in.
I am a mental health advocate and a veteran. I spent a little bit of time in the United States Army, not as long as Elvis, who spent 2 years, but close. But I think I've always had, especially in high school, some mental health challenges. But of course, my parents didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was just growing up. I had some depression, and I thought of it, looking back on it, it's textbook mental illness, textbook schizophrenia, thinking somebody was after me, and so I joined the army, and because I was acting out because of my mental illness, they didn't like me very much. So I experienced hazing. I was actually duct taped in the fetal position. It was probably the most traumatic thing in my life, I think, and I really believe that's how schizophrenia really came out. And it took some time to get over it, but you know, I've always wanted to write. I wanted to write ever since the seventh grade. I had a great English teacher who was all about creative writing. I really enjoyed it, and you know, even when I was in the army, I wanted to be a writer. I wrote these long delusional letters, honestly, to my relatives. My brother, who stopped reading them because he told me it's too much, and um, in time, I I honestly, at the time, for about a year there, I thought I had special powers because all the voices and delusions I had were people like soldiers who I served with, friends from Richmond, Virginia. They were all real voices, and I could see them in my mind. So I thought I had special powers. And it took me about a year to realize I did, in fact, have an illness. And I, it gotten so bad that I was a danger to myself and my parents. I was living at my parents' place, and they actually called the police on me. I was handcuffed in the driveway, and God bless them. If they hadn't wouldn't have if they didn't do that, I don't think I would have gotten help. It was a tough situation, and I was mad at them at first, but now I totally understand why they did that. That was probably the hardest thing a parent has to do is you know do that. And you know and I went to the psych ward for a couple of months. Then I went to homeless respite because I couldn't move back into my parents' house. They were unsure about how I would treat them. But in the homeless respite, the medication started taking hold, and I realized I did in fact have schizophrenia, and I accepted it. I just That's how life is going to be for me. And like I said before, I've always enjoyed writing, and I was actually staying at my aunt's house and was trying to find a way to share my story, and this academic journal came up called Schizophrenia Bulletin, who does first person accounts of people schizophrenia and severe mental illness or related mental illness, and that was just how I really found my purpose. Without schizophrenia, as terrible as it sounds, I wouldn't have a purpose. I know I can share my story. I can help others, maybe even give advice. Sometimes you really don't know what to say because it's just um, I don't want to tell people you got to let your loved one hit bottom. I'd rather not say that. You know, that's pretty much why I got help is because I hit bottom. I was growing up around the alternative and grunge area, with which looking back at the songs I was listening to, they were first person accounts of mental illness. Yeah, listen to Kurt Cobain, Nirvana's song "Lithium." That's a first person account of depression. And lithium is a drug for depression. I didn't know that at the time. I thought lithium was like weed or something like that, like fun pill. Okay, but it's just like you know, I shaved my head then too when that song was popular, and when he said, um, "Because today I shaved my head," I thought that was awesome because I shaved my, head, you know, yeah. But it's depression was there, but it's just it's what is help? What did help look like then? We really didn't know. We kind of suffered, and luckily I had good friends that kind of listened, and God bless them. They were great to me then. We don't really connect now just because we have different lives, jobs, family, kids. So yeah. But looking back, I definitely had depression in middle school and high school. I didn't know how to ask for help, but I did ask for help. I asked for help in a church camp. I was raised Baptist, and it was the last night, and the last night you could say ask for prayer request or um, just whatever, like prayers of thanksgiving. And I said, I've thought about killing myself. I thought about suicide, and that for whatever reason I had a mohawk at the time, and that I was already stood out because of the mohawk. But I said that, and you know, nobody really put their arm around me or embraced me or said, it's going to be okay. Let's talk to your parents, which I don't know how I would handle that if they talked to my parents. But the only person who really stood up for me was my brother. And he was awesome. He said, Jason, I love you. Mom and dad love you. It's going to be okay. And this is a time, was it going to be okay? I don't know. But that kind of gave me the boost to get through middle school and some of high school. And yeah, it was rough. Uh, I still go to church. I go to church online now, so it didn't turn me away from God. It's just how do you handle that? Nobody knew really how to handle that. You know, back then, back then. Um, but I am a man of faith. I pray often. It's kind of like meditation for me. But I won't preach to you today because I don't want to do that. My brother and I think he was in high school and I was my freshman. We like going to live shows. We were into punk rock, and I remember on a birthday, my coffee was usually 11:30, but one of my favorite bands were playing. He got my parents to let me stay out later so I could see this band. And that's just our relationship at the time. Now he has kids, he has two jobs. God bless. I pray for him all the time, just that he has time throughout the day to relax and time where he feels contented and satisfied. But he's a great guy. He's a great dad, great work ethic. He's a great dad and great husband. Still, and I love him to death. I joined in 2003, and 9/11 was still pretty close in everybody's memory. The thing is, I never actually saw the footage of the planes going to the World Trade Center until I came back from the Army, because at the time I was living in this crappy apartment. All I had was this clock radio, and I listened to it on the radio because I usually, I was still dealing with mental illness, and for the most part, I slept in instead of going to college, even though I only lived a block away. That day, I heard it on the radio, and just, you know, I'm a visual guy. I have to see it, you know. But it's just like I remember my college government teacher back in '99 saying, the USA will never be uh, attacked or invaded again, and that happened, and I was like, what, and just I don't know if you remember, but just walking around, everybody's eyes were glazed over, like they know what was going on. Well, I believe I wanted to be a firefighter first. So I was a preschool teacher day. That's how I paid my rent. I moved out of that crappy apartment, moved into a friend of mine with a friend of mine. Um, and it's just like a friend of a friend visited the friend, and he was like, I joined the army. I got to go back to Maine because he's from Maine, and was going to go to the recruitment. I was like, wow, that's actually doing something about what's going on now. And it really attracted. I was attracted to the army, and I felt like the firefighting didn't work out because there was a lot of math and science. I'm not a math and science kind of guy. This subject was fire hydraulics, about how much water goes through a hose, sand pipes, and all this stuff. And I was just terrible at it. And so I was like, well, and if I join the army, I get the GI Bill, and I'll actually have health care because this was way before Barack Obama and health care. So I would have health care. I thought that was interesting that I would be taken care of like that. And it's just, I went on the website and I kind of took the little quiz, and it says Cavalry Scout, 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. And the definition of this job title was to find the enemy, set up the front lines. And I was very attracted to that. I thought, but I tell you, I struggled in basic training and advanced training for the job. But I managed to graduate, and yeah, I was in Fort Army in the Mojave Desert. I didn't go to Afghanistan or Iraq. But the thing about this particular duty station, there's nothing to do. These were a lot of young adults, young men with time on their hands. And young adults with time on their hands is usually a bad thing. And I was acting out as far as mental illness goes. They didn't like me. I couldn't relate to them, probably for a lot of reasons. And, it I they didn't like me. So I tried. I think the most important thing was my willingness to serve. I did want to serve, but it just didn't end up because of mental illness. Mental illness stops your life. It's interrupted. I thought an old ex-girlfriend was stalking me, which totally does not make any sense now that I look back at it. But for whatever reason, I thought she came to California from Richmond, Virginia, wanting to marry me, which is a total delusion, part of schizophrenia, thinking somebody's in love with you. And I thought it was just crazy. It was a hurricane, tornado going on in my head. And I thought the guys were sleeping with her and all this stuff. And I couldn't surf, I needed help. And so I actually went to the mental health clinic thinking I had special power. I didn't mention it. I thought I had special powers because you remember I said the people in my mind were people in the army and from Richmond, so I thought I could talk to them through telepathy. And I actually went to the mental health clinic thinking I could go someplace else or do whatever. And they sent me down to take the psychiatric test on the computer. And I went to Balboa Naval Hospital in San Diego, where I was diagnosed with schizophrenia the first time, but I thought I fooled them. I thought, oh no, I have special powers, and they think I have schizophrenia. Oh man, that's stupid. I'm schizoaffective bipolar type. And, I told you about the depression early in my life. Well, I told a psychiatrist at the Richmond VA, who I was seeing for a little bit, and she said, and I went there and said, I'm having some suicidal ideation. I don't know why. And she said, you've never taken an antidepressant before. So why don't we try that? That was a game changer. Had I been on an antidepressant in high school and college, who knows? Maybe I could have gotten a bachelor's degree. Schizophrenia would be in there somewhere. I was in severe pain one time, and we were running, and I fell out of the run, which is probably another reason why I experienced hazing. Falling out of the run is bad news. And my section sergeant was over me, yelling at me, and I was in tears because of all the pain in my feet. And it's just like, it was, oh my goodness, so much pain, such an uncomfortable moment. And, it's a lot of the army is tough it out. I think people in charge, I wrote this article on the Journal of Schizophrenia Journal, that my NCOs, my officers, the people in charge of me couldn't recognize that I was dealing with a mental illness. Look, when I look back at it, I thought it was obvious, but they weren't trained to pick out, oh, that guy may be dealing with a mental illness, Instead, I got so bad that they wanted to punish me with hazing and other kind of things like that. Now, in school, I think teachers, professors, principals, people in charge should be able to recognize somebody dealing with mental illness. Now, would I've gotten help because I was a smart ass senior year in high school? I don't know, but it's nice to hear that people care about what you're doing. My When I was a senior in high school, I was taking this college English class, and again, it was another thing where I was thinking about suicide. Um, and he was like, I just want to make sure you're okay. You're okay. And I liked him anyway because he treated us like adults, not like high school kids. But I think they should be able to recognize somebody with a mental illness, that somebody's struggling.
To go beyond the show, be sure to connect with us on all social media platforms at NoStigmas, and you can always reach out at NoStigmas.org to connect with us and see how we can team up together to champion mental health equity for all. Remember, to break these stigmas, we must be unsilent. We'll see you next time.